You are listening to Training Matters with Honey Shelton. Training Matters is brought to you by the Training Institute, dedicated to setting the standard for individuals responsible for training effectiveness in banks and credit unions across the country.
Welcome to Training Matters. Our monthly talk show focuses on providing industry insight from experts that impact training effectiveness. I'm Honey Shelton, your host, and I'm glad you could join us. We are busy this week at Interaction Training, preparing for our Train the Trainer boot camp. I know several of you are packing your bags to join us in Houston for 4 days of dynamic and engaging learning. We have several trainers returning to complete Advanced Week, the third step in obtaining their credentials as a certified bank training professional or certified credit union training professional. Each month, we invite a guest to share their expertise with us. Today's guest is Kathy Box. Kathy's my friend and for 25 years a highly valued client of Interaction Training. She's Executive Vice President of Professional Development with the Texas Bankers Association in Austin, Texas. Kathy joined TBA 29 years ago and has served in various capacities in the Education Department, managing all educational activities for the last 20 years. She was awarded the Texas Bankers Association Chairman's Award in 1999 for her service to the organization. Prior to joining TBA, Kathy produced educational seminars and institutes for the State Bar of Texas for 10 years. Kathy has a journalism degree from the University of Texas. I know our audience will enjoy this opportunity to hear from an industry leader that is focused on how she can help bankers meet the demand to train and develop their staff. You can tell from Kathy's background that she has spent her professional career zeroing in on knowing what her clients' training needs are and develop training programs that meet those needs. Welcome, Kathy.
Glad to be here, honey. I hear great comments about Training Matters, and I'm very pleased to be a guest.
Well, Kathy, we're so pleased that you are our guest today. Tell us more about your role at TBA, what you do.
Well, as you said, we manage a number of products and services that are intended to train and enhance the professional careers of bankers around the state. We also create webinars and other products that we provide to the other state banking associations around the country. We find that this collaboration is very helpful to us and to them as well, and so it's a win-win. But for 29 years, I have managed what has turned out to be about 10 conferences, 8 schools, 150 seminars, convention, publications. And what I'm really excited about is a move toward creating more peer-to-peer opportunities so that bankers can share what they know with other bankers.
Well, I'm almost in awe of the energy and the expertise that I'm acquainted with that you have in your department. And that is a lot of opportunity for developing expertise. And I like what you talked about peer-to-peer. I know from many of your members, clients of ours, how much they value that. For our audience, I really would like it if you could elaborate on the purpose and the mission of a state banking association.
I think a number of people sometimes are not aware of what all their state banking association can do for them if you're a bank employee. And like any trade association, top of the list is that we represent our member banks, both at the state and the federal political arenas. So we have lobbyists who do all the state lobbying, as well as the federal lobbying, and then we also have lobbyists in Washington, D.C. So we're always on the lookout. We're always trying to do what we can to protect the interests of bankers from around the country and within the state. But then secondly, I think the education function is very important, and most trade associations for any industry will be providing the skills and the knowledge that their members need to succeed in the marketplace. We pride ourselves in the diversity of the educational products that we have. We also pride ourselves in the amount of communication and information that our communications department provides as well. So it's kind of a three-legged stool in that we have the lobbying, we have education, and then we have communication. And those are there for our members to utilize in any way that they deem necessary. We're constantly surveying our bankers to find out what it is that we can create for them, what information they need, and how we can help them succeed.
Well, I know personally that I've tapped in to the expertise that state banking associations offer by, for example, calling your general counsel to get clarification about something. And oftentimes, I encourage any client of ours to look to their state banking association for direction or information, and most definitely education. The hottest topic I think that's out there always seems to be compliance, and I know that TBA stays right on top of the changes in the industry. Can you talk about how the association meets the high demand for compliance training and any compliance services that support banks that are trying to stay on top of this mountain that continues to add height? Tell me about that, Kathy.
I would say when compliance really became a major component in bank operations, could have been maybe 10 or 15 years ago. And obviously that's when we started ramping up our annual programs. I believe it was 25 years ago, actually, that we began our compliance school. We have a 5-day compliance school that addresses both deposit and lending compliance functions, and then a compliance update school, so those graduates of the school can come back each year for a refresher. In addition, we have a number of webinars and online training resources that provide a quicker version of if there's something that they need to address, if there's an implementation date coming up, or if they just need to train a number of employees. There are a number of deliveries that we have for that kind of information. Obviously, after the passage of Dodd-Frank, this need to provide compliance information was ramped up to a high degree. We've always had a compliance hotline where we will answer questions from TBA members, and those calls have now ramped up to about 2,000 a month that we answer. But about 4 years ago, after the passage of Dodd-Frank and the realization that a bank compliance officer had way more on their plate than they could handle, we created Compliance Alliance, which is a separate entity of Texas Bankers Association that is now owned and managed by 22 state banking associations. And by becoming a member of Compliance Alliance, it really helps support that compliance officer function within the bank so that the bank doesn't necessarily have to add additional personnel. And those members can benefit from reviews of regulations, from policies, procedures, again, the compliance hotline. It's really a way of augmenting your current compliance staff. But that was brought on by the necessity by Dodd-Frank to have to do something like that.
Well, I know I've heard a lot of talk about Compliance Alliance and the service that it provides your members, as well as the other states that have tied into that. And many of the trainers, for example, that we work so closely with, just such a big concern they have is knowing that the information they're sharing or responsible for developing and training people on is accurate. So though the 2,000 calls a month sounds like a lot to me, it isn't the least bit surprising. What opportunities for involvement are there for bankers with training responsibilities in the TBA and possibly other state banking associations? But I know you can address that best about TBA.
I can tell you what we try to provide for training directors and very often the HR personnel in the bank. And because I'm so familiar with my peers around the country and what the other state banking associations are doing, I can say that it's very similar to the services that they would provide for their members as well. But we start with, we have an HR and operations and training conference every August. In fact, ours is coming up August 19th through 21st at the Lost Pines Hyatt. And throughout that program, we try to provide, again, a lot of peer-to-peer interaction, because we do feel that you learn a great deal from folks who are in the field doing the same job that you're doing, as well as we have 2.5 days of professional speakers coming in, Honey Shelton included, thank goodness, to talk about the best practices and to talk about the employment law and a number of other things that have to do with not only training but managing staffs and managing the HR function as well. Again, we have our peer-to-peer network. We call them HR huddles, and more often than not, those are training directors coming to get tips on how to manage the training function within the bank. The way the HR huddle works is that we have an HR and training committee who will host a meeting within their bank. They're free to the attendees. They show up, they have a little breakfast, and then they pick anywhere from 2 to 5 topics that the group can discuss and share best practices. They can share policies. It's just a great way for them to interact with one another. As the state association, we try to facilitate those meetings as best we can. We plan, we organize, we arrange, we make sure that there is someone there to facilitate the discussion, and then we just let them go. So hopefully that's a decent way for the training directors to get out and see what is going on.
Well, I think the HR huddles are a great resource. I've had the opportunity to sit in on a couple of those, and it's invigorating to see the level of passion and interest as people in HR and training are delving into, what have you found as a solution? What's working for you? What good resources are out there? I'm so glad Kathy mentioned the HR conference the Texas Bankers Association is offering in a few weeks. It reminded me that that is the very kind of event that any of you responsible for managing or developing training may want to investigate for opportunities to network and learn. All of us, Zach Merrill, Janice Branch, and I speak at events or present programs for state associations and are especially fortunate to routinely come in to do in-house work for banks and credit unions, presenting topics that bolster learning at companies like yours. Some of the topics we get the most calls about include supervisor boot camp, train the trainer, essential teller issues, sales and service, and many more. Just recently, I did 7 training sessions for a credit union on spotting cross-selling opportunities and making referrals. With that topic in mind, here are 5 simple things you can do that set the stage for creating or spotting opportunities or making a referral every time, every client interaction. Number 1, smile. Of course, you can hear a smile. You can see a smile in people's eyes. And for all of us that work in financial institutions and play a role in being responsible for impression management, it's part of our dress code. Number 2, assure the client you will help them. 3, discover their name. 4, use their name. And 5, always, every time, ask, is there anything else I can do for you today? It would sound something like this. Someone walks into the lobby, you look up, and the first thing you do is smile. They come to you, they ask a question, like in this case, they might say, can I cash a check here? I want you to right then say this, I will be glad to help you. Even if you aren't able to cash the check, Even if they're requesting something that doesn't go on at your company, honor the request by saying, "I'll be glad to help you with that. May I have your name?" "Mr. Brown, are you presently a customer?" So you can see how those first three things set the stage for a very positive encounter versus Mr. Brown walks in, you're busy, he gets to you, you look up, he says, "Can I cash a check here?" And you say this, "What's your account number?" I'm sure you hear the contrast of how positive it is if always, every time, right away, we look and sound receptive with a smile on our face, respond to a request always by saying, "I'll be glad to help you," and then ask for their name if need be. You might recognize them and know their name, or they may have handed you something that has their name on it. Use their name right away, and then at the end of this encounter, ask, "Is there anything else I can do for you today?" I'll bet you can see how these 5 things can make all the difference in making the client experience one that they view as positive and highly satisfying. So just like the state associations, we want to support you in meeting the training needs you encounter. Call us or visit our website to learn more about that. I want to thank you, Kathy, for being our guest today and our audience for tuning in. We'll look forward to next month. Thanks, everybody.
You've been listening to Training Matters with Honey Shelton.